Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video, ATP Geopolitics, with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce's US election special. This is basically the last one before I think I am going to do a live tonight. I was looking at the timing of when the results are going to come out, and I think actually, should we start with that? Let's go and look at what time things will happen to give you a sense of what's going to take place tonight and the order it will be. So UK time and US time. So 10 p.m. UK time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Exit polls will start to give the context. So around 10 o'clock will be a good time to have a little bit of a live. It might be several lives. So I don't think I can keep that going for 2 hours, right? Then at midnight, which is 7 p.m. Eastern time, Georgia and North Carolina might well start telling us some results. They're the first clues. They're on the eastern side, of course. And so therefore they are likely to close their polls first, start getting results in. And actually there are some claims that if North Carolina goes to Kamala Harris, then that's kind of game over for Trump, because if that's going to go, then it's far more likely that some of these other swing states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, although different contexts, we'll come to that later. I'm going to do a map showing you what I think. Anyway, that's midnight my time, UK time, and then we have 1 a.m. in the morning. As it says here, which is 8 p.m. Eastern time. Oh God, it's Pennsylvania. And then 2 a.m., which is 9 p.m. Eastern time, 3 more battleground states: Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin. But actually, some of these might be later. Another interesting one to watch, as mentioned here, is Iowa, 3 a.m. UK time, Nevada. So what I might do is go on to maybe 2 a.m., have a sleep, get up at 6 a.m. I don't know if I can manage to do that. I don't know. I'm going to play around with what I'm going to do, and I'll go live if I can. And if people are there, people are there. And if they're not, they're not. So, there we go. Right. I keep procrastinating and starting this video because I keep coming across more and more data points and interesting videos and stuff to share with you. You know what I'm like. I just give you a smorgasbord of stuff and just talk about it, and somehow it makes sense. Well, at least I hope it does. We're going to start with looking at rallies again and looking at the final rallies that are taking place. You've got some big ones tonight, which I am a little bit nervous about, because I think the Democratic ones are looking like they are 2016 style, big, confident. But then if you lose, whoa, that's really embarrassing. And there are hallmarks of Katy Perry 2016. She's actually, I think, singing tonight as well. But loads of things, these parallel events taking place that are going to sync with each other and have one big live synthesis across 8 different events, I think. And that's really big and bold and risky. So I'm slightly worried about that. So we're going to talk about some rallies, compare them like I have for the last forever, but just continue to look at some of these data points and go, what does this tell us? Because I think this is a problem. So the first thing is that Ivanka didn't show up for Trump's Women for Trump rally, and neither did his own wife. That is really, really interesting. And like I've told you before, I showed you that thing yesterday of Trump's cabinet, and there was 18 people there, and only one is supporting Trump now, of a cabinet of 18 people. And that one, actually, I didn't mention this, of course, is Nikki Haley in that picture. And she, although she's endorsed him, she ran against him, didn't really endorse him, is kind of through gritted teeth endorsing him, but he's not used her. He doesn't like her because he holds a grudge. So he's not used her at all on the campaign trail. So the idea that he can get those Nikki Haley voters, he's just ditched that because he's got too much pride, because he hates people that hold a grudge against it. Oh, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, when you've got sort of 17 out of 18 people that were your team not endorsing you, to me, that invalidates anyone voting for him. Anyone voting for Trump on the basis of that is going against rational judgment. But it's not that. Where have you seen Ivanka Trump on this campaign trail? You haven't. Where have you seen Melania? You've seen her once at the RNC, where he didn't get to properly kiss her. She didn't really want to touch him, and then didn't sit next to him, only sat in the audience when he was on stage. When he was in the audience, she wasn't there. She hates him. Everyone knows about this. It's kind of fairly obvious. She saw him recently she was with him recently at one particular event, but that's it. She's not been seen on the campaign trail. Women for Trump, he's missing the 2 of the major women in his life. Alistair Campbell shared a Ivanka Trump thread that I read through today. It's really interesting. Ivanka, I think it was her birthday. She was saying all these kind of life guiding quotes from like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. A really thoughtful thread. Ivanka Trump, I was like, you are such a world apart in what you're saying there. That is insight she was giving in this big thread about, giving advice to people and whatnot, and using these really quite good quotes. And I was thinking, you are nothing like Trump. No wonder you are not associating with him. If you can cogently bring that kind of thought process to your life and advice to other people, then that doesn't marry with supporting this guy over here. This is really interesting. And Alistair Campbell said, oh, Ivanka is not endorsing Trump. Now, she doesn't actually say that there, but I think what he's doing is inferring from this tweet thread that actually she's not in a place to publicly endorse him. She's been nowhere. So I think that's really interesting. And again, that's got to tell you something. If you've got the two women in your life not supporting Women for Trump, a Women for Trump event, that's weird. If you've got 17 out of 18 of your cabinet not endorsing you, and the one that is endorsing you, you've shoved off to one side, you're not talking to her, and really she's not really endorsing you, she's only doing it because she's looking after her own political future in the GOP, you got to worry. Right. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about the end of Trump's campaign and how painful it's been. He is limping. He is crawling across the line.
First thing I want to talk about, guys, is the info wars. Okay, info flow, rather. One of the most experienced presidential political operatives in modern American history said to me in the last week of the campaign, you want to win the information flow. And I would say, I'm not predicting Donald Trump will lose. I'm not cheering for Donald Trump will lose. But I would say from Madison Square Garden until yesterday, he has lost the info flow, both because the Harris campaign is having optimistic, loud, vibrant events. The press is on their side, and that helps. But Donald Trump's yesterday in Lancaster that I went to was one of the worst events I've ever seen him hold. He was tired, hoarse. He talked about election denialism. He made a joke about the press being shot. He barely talked about the issues that where he's ahead. This was not the weave. This was the wander. And he got better during his subsequent events. But I would say he and his team have spent the week insulting Hispanics, blacks, women, and being pessimistic and dark and calling Kamala Harris a moron. So, Sean, whether you think it'll cost him the race or not, and I think it might, if it's close, assuming it's close, I think this could cost him the race.
That's super important. So this is a valid data point. In fact, a number of data points, because actually, rally after rally, he is totally low in low energy, low enthusiasm. The people if you look at that clip he was showing you, the people standing behind, we'll look at this in a second, people standing behind him were bored looking. And I think he has, I just think he's too old. I think he's lacking energy and lacking enthusiasm. The question is that a sign of some of the internals coming through that are showing he's in trouble? Which is why he's spending more time legally challenging the results up front. There are some people saying that he's going to declare victory as soon as the polls close, which is a really dangerous thing to do, because it shows that actually it's not about the data, it's not about the results, it's about you trying to control the narrative, and it's all going to be about challenging the election results legally. Now, this is Katty Kay, who lives in America now, has a family in America. She's a BBC journalist, but also MSNBC on Morning Joe, and she's a co-host of The Rest of Politics US with Auntie Scaramucci. She's really good. I like Katty Kay on US politics, and I like Scaramucci, actually. This goes to exactly what Halperin was just saying.
It's 5 stops that she's doing in Pennsylvania today, in Scranton, Reading, Allentown, Pittsburgh, and then ending up in Philly. I had dinner last night with somebody who had been to his rally in Pennsylvania yesterday, the rally where he said, if you want to shoot me, you'd have to shoot me through the fake news. And it was really, this is a visitor over from the UK who's just here on a kind of political tourism week, which is a kind of extraordinary thing in and of itself. And they queued for an hour and a half. They waited for him for 3 hours. She said that by the time he arrived at 11 a.m., the crowd was kind of flat. He did not manage to re-energize them. hundreds of people were leaving early. They were kind of streaming out, as soon as he arrived. Basically, they wanted to see him, but they didn't want to hang around for an hour's speech because they'd already been waiting for 4 hours. And her takeaway, and she.
So let's get this straight, right? These claims about people leaving early are not lies. They're not psyops. This is literally what has been happening. These claims about there being empty seats are true. These claims about the speeches being low energy, well, you can go and see them yourselves. They're self-evidently true, right? Obviously true. And this is an issue. If you've got a British person going, I'm just turning up to this event because I'm really interested in seeing what a Trump rally's like, expecting it to be amazing, having to wait for 1.5 hours in a queue and then 3 hours, is that 4.5 hours before he even comes on? He's 3 hours late. Like, you would be, and then you get to hear that, you would just be totally underwhelmed. How would you feel leaving that? Well, you would be not as enthused about voting for Trump. Not necessarily voting for. I think these people, it's baked in for the Americans there. They're going to vote for this guy, no matter how crap his speech is. But it's about whether that's going to instill in you a kind of evangelical desire to go and talk about this and convert people over to your side of the, over to your team. And that's never going to happen with this kind of performance.
She was quite surprised by this because she'd heard about, Donald Trump rallies being great shows, was just how flat it was and how down and low energy was her expression, and rather kind of surly he was throughout the thing. She said it just wasn't the fun show she had been expecting. And yet you contrast that, and I wanted to get your take on this, Anthony, with her final days. She does Saturday Night Live on Saturday night. She stopped mentioning Donald Trump on purpose. The campaign has decided they're going to end positive and optimistic and upbeat. And it's in her demeanor as much as anything. I mean, if you took these two candidates just in a study of psychology and took this snapshot of time, it feels to me like there's a big difference.
It does, and I agree with everything that you just said. But I want to ask you a question before I give you some of my analysis. If you're waiting 4 hours and you stream out when he arrives, if you're waiting 4 hours, to me, it still smells like you're going to go to the polls, right? If you're there, wait.
And that's my point that I was just making, that these people are still going to vote. So it's not about the people at the rallies, right? If you're going to go to a Trump rally, you are going to vote for Trump. You're not going to go to the rally and say, that was a really crap experience. It's really... You're not going to, and so therefore I'm going to vote for Harris. That's never going to happen. So everyone that goes to a Trump rally is going to vote Trump. But it's about, one, is that lack of enthusiasm reflective of the wider electorate? And two, what are those people going to do? Are they going to be enthused to go and knock on doors, to get out there, volunteer for Trump, to go and phone people as soon as they get back, get onto social media, say, I just went, take recordings of that on TikTok, on your phone, and put it on TikTok or Facebook or YouTube and say, check out this amazing rally. I was at the Trump rally. It was absolutely brilliant. Or are you just going to leave early and go, well, that's a bit of a damp squib, wasn't it? And then go home, crack open a bottle of wine and put your feet up. Do you know what I mean? Like this I think is these are important data points to take into consideration. Now, was then starting to reach mainstream media.
Quickly show you here. We're in North Carolina. This is going to be his first stop. He's making 2 stops in Pennsylvania, Reading, and then Pittsburgh before finishing the night, as he did in 2016 and 2020 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I want to show you guys real fast what this crowd looks like, because Donald Trump was scheduled to take the stage at 10 a.m., and our Tony Butler is going to show you what this crowd currently looks like. We're looking at about a capacity about 70% full here. And for 9 years, I'm going to have Tony pan to the right. For 9 years, we have talked about the enthusiasm in the masses that have come out for Trump's rallies time and again, even at his politically lowest points, including in 2022. But interestingly, and I can't tell you exactly why, but in this final week, we have seen far smaller crowds. We were in Greensboro, North Carolina, where just a few thousand people. Macon, Georgia, just a few thousand people yesterday. What does that mean? Ultimately, you can only discern so much from what crowd sizes look like. But interestingly, for the first time since I've been covering Donald Trump since 2015, there's been us in the press that have been looking around questioning why the crowd sizes have been less than what we are accustomed to. There are some people that have suggested that a great many folks have already early voted, so they feel like they've done their thing. They don't got to come out. Others have said, look, he's been to North Carolina so many times. It's essentially saturated at this point, but at this point in time, it's hard not to take any little clue that there is.
And that point that it's saturated might make a bit of sense, but Kamala Harris is doing another 5 events, as they just mentioned previously, in Philadelphia, Katty Kay was saying, in Pennsylvania, and they are getting absolutely raucous crowds. And there are queues around the block, and they've just been camped in Pennsylvania for the last week, basically. And they are not having this issue. And so therefore, something, why is there a place where he's already late? So that should be full. It's only 70% full. And, why do people leave early, etc., and all those same questions. CNN does the same here. Again, the mainstream media really started to pick up on something that we've been talking about for a good week or so.
The turnout today so far for this event is quite thin. There is a lot of empty seats left in this arena, and Donald Trump is now supposed to speak in the next hour here. So I'm not saying that's a sign about what we can expect in Pennsylvania by any stretch or in this county, but Donald Trump has built his brand around his ability to turn out large crowds. And so far in the stops today in North Carolina and here in Reading, it is noticeably thin here.
Interesting. Okay, so let's go and look a little more at that. Here we got Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania is supposed to start in 10 minutes. The arena is just largely empty, and it's now assuming this is true, but supposed to start in 10 minutes, and he's got a largely empty arena. That's again bad. This is what a half-empty Trump rally looks like in Reading, Pennsylvania, a day before Election Day. Absolutely problematic, hugely problematic for Trump there, I think, and again, reflective of something. And then I love this picture because it's absolutely right. Zoom in on every single person in the background here. This is Trump in the middle of a speech, and let's do exactly that. Let's zoom in on everyone here, right? Not a single human is smiling. She looks virtually dead of boredom. So does this woman. This woman's looking down. He's looking off sideways, not particularly enthused. Same with, I can tell from that face, she's not enthused. No one there is looking enthused. He's on his phone trying to take a picture of the back of that woman's head. They're on their phone, not interested. She's looking elsewhere. She's looking on her phone. She's looking down. Like, this is someone else is laughing, looking over there at something else. I mean, this tells you so much, I think. His rallies are poor. This is his closing arguments week, and we have seen nothing but very bad rallies, to the point where some of his insiders, I was listening to I should probably have brought this one up. I was listening to an interview today, or an analysis today, where someone was saying, I forget what news channel. Oh, it was on CNN. I was watching CNN. It's back on Virgin today, so I was watching it. They put it up for the elections, which is fantastic. And they were saying, look, I've just spoken to some insiders at the Trump campaign, and they said they're not really bothered whether he wins or not. Like, they're not really looking after. They're so fed up with the campaign. Like, as human beings working for the campaign, high up in the campaign, and they're not at a point where they're completely enthused and they're thinking, yeah, we're going to win this, we're going to take this on, and then I'm going to be involved in the administration. They're like, I'm done. After this, I'm done. So the people inside the campaign, at least some of them, this is anecdotal, but some people inside the campaign apparently are just fed up with the campaign and fed up with the whole thing. It's really interesting. And as this all says, a very tired Trump is spewing a complete gibberish right now. And I said, First Lady, see, this is a little bit of a weave. You see these stories, First Lady, boom, boom, you can always bring it back when it comes to a time when it doesn't meet at the bottom. Then it's time to say, let's not do this shit anymore. We won't do this anymore. But so what happened? That's what he says. That's obviously me putting a kind of negative rhetorical spin on that. But like, he's starting to swear a lot, which is, some people are saying, is down to his inhibitions. Like, that whole oral sexing with a microphone is a sign of dementia, where your veto system just goes out the window.
And I said, First Lady, see, this is a little bit of a weave. You see those stars? First Lady, book, boom. But you got to always bring it back. When it comes to a time when it doesn't meet at the bottom, then it's time to say, let's not do this shit anymore. We won't do this anymore. But, so what happened is Van Jones, and I said first.
And yeah, I mean, I can follow that. I can follow what he's saying, but it is just like low energy drivel. Now, I thought this was very interesting. Let's listen to him.
The Green Party.
I love the Green Party. The Green Party of the US. Interestingly, the Green Party of the US has been rejected by a coalition of Green parties around the world because of Jill Stein's predilections for Vladimir Putin and authoritarian regimes. And they're not really interested in kind of green politics. They're interested in supporting Trump and nicking his voters, nicking Kamala Harris's voters, as people think I'm not going to vote Harris, I'm going to vote Green, maybe as a protest against Israel-Palestine, maybe as whatever it might be. But Trump sees Jill Stein as incredibly important for his potential success, and therefore I love the Green Party. He doesn't give a monkey's ass about environmental policies.
I love the Green Party. Jill Stein, this may be I never met her, but she may be one of my favorite politicians.
I've never met her, but she may be one of my favorite politicians. But think of it, like, the way he's saying this, like the slur and the lack of energy.
I've never met her, but she may be one of my favorite politicians.
He can't be asked to open his mouth. It's incredible. This is deeply, deeply insulting.
It's done in a matter of weeks. When our stupid generals, our terrible generals, the guys up top like Milley, like Kelly, real losers. Kelly was dumb as a rock. I'll never do that again. I say, give me a letter of resignation. Yes, sir. So,
to accuse a 4-star general who was his chief of staff, who was very competent at, at everything he'd done up to that moment of leaving the White House, to call him dumb as a rock is so insulting. That him and Milley were real losers is really, really deeply insulting, and I think is just if anyone's dumb as a rock, it is this man who has shown very much that he doesn't have a grasp on the basics of economics, the basics of actually political agendas and ideology. He just says what he thinks people want to hear, and shows a complete lack of regard for learning more about any given area of expertise. He doesn't read. He doesn't seek to become more knowledgeable, more expert on anything to do with running the freaking country. That's hugely important. How could you not want? Surely you feel the burden of responsibility to go out there and do the best job you possibly can, to learn as much about what you are commanding and how you're going to command it. He doesn't have an interest in that at all, because he's deeply narcissistic, and this is just about power, raw power for him. This is about him, and it's not about the country. That, honestly, I can't say this any clearer, right? If there's any indication that Trump doesn't give a flying fig about the USA, there is no greater indication than his lack of desire as a result of having this burden of responsibility to those people, to the institutions and to the Constitution, to actually get off his fat ass and do something about his lack of knowledge of these different subjects and how to rule. He's so blasé with his language. Oh, we'll find out in a second. Oh, go and vote. 7 o'clock. Well, whatever time it is. I don't know. You go and vote. 100% tariff, 200%, 400%, 500%, 2,000% tariffs across the board. I don't know. Something like that. If that's how you're going to run a country, that's a contempt you have for your electorate. You do not deserve to be in charge of that country. And I am blown away. And I'm sure the people on my threads that are still supportive of Trump have to do it through cognitive dissonance reduction extremes, or they're just Russian trolls. Probably Russian trolls. But then there's still 46%. I think he's got a hard ceiling. I don't think he's going to win the election, but he might squeeze it. But my goodness, actually, he doesn't warrant a single one of those votes. He has shown absolutely no desire to indicate what a responsibility that position really is. On the other hand, Kamala Harris, right? She is the only presidential candidate in our 300-year history, says Dwight Marshall, to have worked in all three branches of government, the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive. That makes her technically the most qualified presidential candidate ever. And yet she is what Trump calls a low IQ individual. She is not a low IQ individual. And that is deeply offensive. And I would suggest a good deal of projection. Now, talking about not really understanding what he's talking about.
100%. 100% of the jobs that were created went to migrants, not to people. And I'll tell you what.
So 100% of the jobs created, and he said this before, 117% of the jobs went to illegal immigrants. You're like, so more jobs than were actually created went to illegal immigrants? This literally doesn't make sense. And I had someone on my thread try and explain this, try and like jump through hoops to explain that. You're like, don't be so desperate, mate. It's not making any sense. But it's also obviously not true. Like the Chips and Science Act. Every single one of the jobs that the Chips and Science Act and the Infrastructure Bill and the Inflation Reduction Act and whatnot, all of those and the jobs that came with them, 100% of the jobs went to migrants. So that you couldn't find a single human being in the US that's taken on a job in the last 4 years of Biden administration. Like, just why do people believe this man? So then it gets to the point where, oh, he's just hyperbole. Or he doesn't really mean that. But as someone the other day rightfully said, you can't vote in someone on the basis that he might not do what he said he would do. Or it might not be true what he claimed. What kind of a basis is that to vote someone in? I'm going to vote for him. It's all right because a bunch of what he said isn't true. And he's not going to do that. Yeah, but which bits is he not going to do? And how do you know which bits he's not going to do and which bits he is? I'm not going to get all geeky here, but this is basically how people interpret the Bible, biblical exegesis, as someone from a secular background would critique. I would say it's like people draw out of their holy books what they want to read into it. So you interpret things through your own moral lens. It's usually how we interpret things. So so I take on this holy book, and just so I'm not anti-Bible, or you could say the same with the Quran or any other holy book. You take the holy book and you go, right, I want this to be true. Because I want this, so this is kind of motivated reasoning. This is how you do motivated reasoning, then it influences your interpretative lens. So you have a reason to believe something. I want to believe this because it's going to make me feel better about this, or do this, or do that. It has a functional dimension, so that's going to make me want to believe it. So that when I do read it, the problematic pieces in this bit of literature, I explain away, and I do that because I'm motivated to do so, and I use all these techniques to say, oh, context, oh, that bit's only allegory, or that bit's not factually true, or the bashing of babies' heads against the rocks in Psalms, whatever, is just an allegory. Okay, but then the genocide there, yeah, but that didn't really happen. And then actually the slavery there was better than slavery that you might see in a modern American sense. And what you're doing is you're saying, right, this is really, really problematic, this area of this holy book, and I'm going to reinterpret it or dismiss it so that the eventual conclusion is this book's absolutely fine and it's what I want to believe it. Right. And that's how you go about interpreting someone like Donald Trump, which is, yeah, I know he said that, but he didn't mean that bit. but he does mean that bit. Yeah, okay, but how are you differentiating the two? Oh, and the reality is it's because I don't like that bit and I do like that bit. So what you're doing is you are reading your own moral code into what Trump is saying. And you're saying the bits I don't like are the bits that he's not going to do. And the bits I do like are the bits he is going to do. But then the next person might have a slightly different paradigm where they select other bits from what that first, because there's no way of knowing. So it's completely subjective. So what you do is you have a Trumpian exegesis where you are interpreting Trump in your own subjective ways so you can get away with still supporting him. And it allows you to dismiss the outright horrific stuff he says, or the really problematic stuff he says, or the downright vague, 100, 200, 400, 500, 2,000% tariffs across the board. Oh, yeah, it's okay that he's so vague. Yeah, what if you're a business leader? Yeah, but tariffs are good. And, you know, do you know anything about tariffs? No, but tariffs are good because they are Chinese. And so you're interpreting tariffs through your dislike for other people. So China are our real enemy. It's not Russia, it's China. And actually, if he says tariffs are going to screw over China, then yeah, I'm going to cheer that on. And there's like, because I want that to be true and I want China to be treated like this, etc., etc. And there's no real grappling with the actual elements of what he's saying. And it's just this subjective moral exegesis from your own point of view of Trump's literature, of what he says. He is the holy book, he is the prophet, and he can do no wrong. And because he can do no wrong, everything that he says that is wrong just gets twisted and reinterpreted or discarded as that was a joke, or that was hyperbole, or, you know, Trump, he says these things. Ha ha ha. Oh, God, Trump. 13 million migrants. Or, I really want 13 million migrants to be evicted from the country. Okay, fair enough. What about their children who are now American citizens? Okay, what about the economy? Okay, what about inflation? So do you want to pay another $5,000 a year for tariffs and migrants being evicted? Like, are you happy to pay that? Because that's what it's going to cost you, or whatever it is. Okay, well, are you not hearing about this? So then we get onto the element of like, okay, you don't understand the impact of tariffs, or you don't understand the impact of the mass deportation of 13 million people, because no one's told you about this, because you're not watching the right kind of media sources that will critically evaluate these claims, and you're just sat inside your information bubble. You know, it's like, obviously, you know, something to give you the religious exegesis scenario. It's like going to church and listening to your pastor talk about Christianity the whole time and come away never hearing a critical word about Christianity because you're in that information bubble. Well, I go to church, that's where I get my information, and this is what I believe is true, and there you go. So we need to have a rich diet of different sources, and I know I struggle with that because I will have a selection bias of the sources. I mean, you just look at what I'm going to be telling you. It's a massive selection bias going on, but I do understand that myself, and I do mitigate against that, and I do understand everything that the Republicans are saying back again. But when we're talking about, Harris doesn't make these sort of problematic claims. Harris is deeply scripted and on point, 30-minute speeches. She's not rambling. And when you ramble, of course, you let out all sorts of stuff that you really shouldn't let out because it's just garbage that's inside your head that's just vomited into the information space in front of you. And then everyone sort of picks the bits they like and discards the bits they don't like. But there's a lot of stuff that people don't like or they shouldn't like that gets vomited out because it's just nonsense that's kicking around inside his head. If you're reading for a teleprompter script and you practice your rhetorical intonation and techniques, so you're delivering a really powerful speech that engenders enthusiasm from the crowd around you, and it's only half an hour, bish, bash, bosh, you go on to do the next one, you've got a tight performance and you've got a tightly organized setup, then you are going to have people going away from those I would say gigs, going away from those rallies much more enthused and much more, you could be cynical and say manipulated to go and work on your behalf in terms of volunteering, in terms of that contagious element of getting out and telling people about it. Right, talking about the get out the vote. This is what I was saying earlier.
You do is go out today. Sounds a little strange. Go out today. Meaning go out in a few hours, okay? This guy's complicated because it sounds so much better when you say tomorrow when it's night, but that's okay. I want to be exactly accurate for them.
What are you banging on about? Just say, get out and vote. On the 5th, get out and vote. As soon as the polls open, get out there. Come on, who's going to vote? And then, you know, he's like,
Today.
Sounds
a little strange.
Sounds a little strange.
Meaning go out in a few hours, okay? This guy's complicated because it sounds so much better when you say tomorrow when it's night, but that's okay. I want to be exactly accurate for them. But go out today and vote. And I guess 7 o'clock or whatever time it is, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And we're going to have...
Get out of whatever, it doesn't matter what time. Maybe 11 o'clock at night. Get out 11 o'clock at night. Maybe 12 o'clock at night. In fact, leave it to the 6th. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter when you vote. Oh, the polls are closed. Oh. And then stuff like this, usual kind of mistakes still being made. You can't hear this very little.
We'd love to have their investment. They're going to build it right here in Detroit or at a minimum.
They're going to build it right here in Detroit. He's speaking at Grand Rapids. You're like, don't even know where you are, mate. This is also a problem.
So Bobby's going to pretty much do what he wants. I want him to do something really important for our country. It makes people healthier. We have obesity. We have every problem.
Bobby is going to pretty much do what he wants. So Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to be in charge of healthcare. He's so into women's health, says Trump. He's going to pretty much do what he wants. What kind of agenda? Like, right, what am I going to vote for? What's healthcare? What's healthcare policy going to be for? What's the platform that Trump is providing for me, the American people, to get behind in terms of healthcare? So what is it? So what are the policies? Bobby's pretty much going to do what he wants. That's the policy. That's the healthcare policy for the Republican Party. Bobby Kennedy is pretty much going to do what he wants. If this was any other election in history and a Democratic candidate came out and said something like this, there'd be Fox News would haul them over the coals. There's such double standards. Trump is allowed to get away with this patent nonsense, this vague political platform, this manifesto that exists precisely nowhere. There's no website. Harris has given an 81 or 83 page economic book on what her economic plan is and the rationale behind it. He's got a website that's got empty headers on. It's got nothing. There's nothing. How are people voting for this man? It blows my mind. So anyway, this is his final rally. It has begun. Let's have a look at this one. This is in, the Trump campaign curtained off the top section because they couldn't fill the arena. What an embarrassing finish to his campaign, says this person. So again, back to the lack of people there.
To be here again with all of you patriotic, God-fearing American men and women in support of our president, Donald J. Trump.
Now look at all of these grey seats. So you've got the whole top area has been curtained off. You've got this top area doesn't look like it's full, and then you've got seats at this end pretty much completely empty.
And what an honor it is to address you here in the Steel City, a day before we make the most consequential.
That's absolutely incredible. That's the last rally, by all accounts. Now, let's look at the other side. This is Philadelphia right now. There's no end in sight for this line to see Kamala Harris tonight. Thousands of people are already waiting, and she doesn't speak for another 5 hours. There's so much joy. People are singing and dancing and having a blast. This is amazing. And that is the kind of excitement that's being engendered there. This was last night. And as someone says here, Ricky Davila says, sorry, not sorry, to MAGA lunatics. There's no faking this momentum and energy. So the claim is, they're paying people, this is fake energy, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to be hit by copyright. So you've just got huge excitement there to see her, and obviously Oprah Winfrey, I think, there. This is Kamala Harris, just took the stage for her last rally in Philadelphia and received thunderous applause. Unlike Trump's rallies, she's finishing strong.
Are we ready to win? Oh, it's good to be back in the city of brotherly love, where the foundation of our democracy was forged. And here at these famous steps, a tribute to those who start as the underdog and climb to victory.
And there's a lot to be said for scripting your speeches, because do you know what? You can craft them on the anvil of literacy and bash out as a wordsmith of literature and oration and rhetorics exactly what you need, the tools that you need. You can forge them and then beat them on the anvil and deliver a stunningly incisive speech that does the trick, that succeeds in doing what you intend it to do. Because you're starting out with, is how you go about creating. Like when I do my writing, it's like, right, what do I want to say? It's audience purpose task. So whenever you're creating content, you always have to think, who's your audience? What's the purpose of what you're doing? And that will inform the form or the task. So when you're writing, like, who's the audience? Or when you're doing a speech, right, the audience is people in Philadelphia. But also this might go out to the wider world, but let's keep it to Philadelphia people. And then the intention is to get them enthused, to get them excited about voting for Kamala Harris, to be feel like they're part of a team, a nation, a unified nation. So we want to unite them. So you have all these intentions, and you will then that will then inform how you construct that speech, and you build up these crescendos, and you're playing with people's emotions and all that stuff. You have these intentions, and you generate ways of achieving those objectives. When you stand up there for an hour and a half and you're spitballing, there's none of that. You are just bleh. What are your intentions? How are you going to achieve your objectives? What are your objectives? Trump, his objectives is to stand there and talk bollocks for an hour and a half and then get off the stage. Occasionally tell people to go out and vote, but it's not really important when they do that. Okay, so at these rallies, we see Nigel Farage. This is interesting. Someone says, you can sit anywhere. Oh, Alistair Campbell says, you can sit anywhere, Nigel, it's half full. And we'll talk about that in a second. So Nigel Farage, he's got a Make America Great Again cap in the colours of his own Reform Party. Now, this is interesting because he was highly critical of Labour people going and helping to support Harris. 100 Labour activists going out and helping support Harris. As happens, you get this cross-fertilisation of political parties around the world, and you get helpers that go out to different countries and do stuff. But it wasn't paid for by the Labour Party. But he went off on one. But he actually went to the RNC when he should have been in Clacton, his constituency. He had only just been voted in, actually, and the RNC took place pretty soon after that. He's just such a hypocrite. So he's over there campaigning effectively for Donald Trump. Nigel doing his bit for Clacton by hanging out with a group of demented lunatics, says Brendan May, who from tomorrow will never wield much influence over anything of consequence ever again. Well, I don't know. We'll see about that.
Over there, he was the big winner of the last did a few years ago. He's doing a great job. I have a man from Europe. I don't know if he's here. I saw him backstage. What he did was, and what he is doing is sort of what we did a few years ago. He's doing a great job. He's he's always been my friend for some reason. He liked me. I liked him. And he's shaking it up pretty good over there. He was the big winner of the last election in the UK, and he's a very spectacular man, very highly respected, Nigel Farage.
Interestingly, lack of seats over there. Filled. Guaranteed half of these people don't know who Nigel Farage really is.
He's a little bit of a rebel, but that's good. You know, that's good. Don't change, Nigel.
Okay, so that's him at a rally. Someone here says, working hard for the people of Clacton. You've got to understand Clacton. So Clacton is this really deprived area where he's got voted in because you might say low information voters, or you might talk about people who are a little left behind in society, and you're thinking, right, they're voting, they're not voting for they'd normally vote Conservative in that particular constituency. They wanted to go against that 14 years of Conservative rule. Previously had voted UKIP when UKIP were a thing. Reforms come along, they voted for Nigel Farage, as if he gives a damn about the people of Clacton. So he's gallivanting off around the world. He doesn't care. So the thing about Nigel Farage becoming an MP is that he's not an MP. There's no way that Nigel Farage is the sort of person that cares about potholes in a road in Clacton. That he does a surgery in Clacton. He has people coming to him saying, oh yeah, I'm really annoyed about the A32, not the A32s in Clacton, but you get my point. The A51B bypass road. Can you do something about that? Or yeah, I'm really annoyed about litter on the streets. And Nigel Farage is like, can I blame the immigrants? I mean, will that do anything to help? You know, he's not like. He'd rather be around in somewhere like this, messing around with his mates. And he wasn't going to run. He only ran last minute. He was going to support Donald Trump on the campaign. That was actually what he was going to be doing up until now. But he had to change that because he was convinced to run in Clacton. Then he got elected and has promptly gone back to America a number of times to do what he really wants to do. Young man by the village people, of course. So there are people loving a bit of Nigel Farage there. I love this. This meme is great. The search for Nigel Farage in Clacton enters its 18th week. Just like as if he's a missing persons. Because he doesn't give a damn about Clacton. And that says it all for me. So massive applause from Nigel Farage as Donald Trump gives him a shout out, says Andy Wigmore, who is another Reform MP, I believe. Is he not? Anyway, a supporter of Nigel Farage. Alistair Campbell, who's formerly of the spin doctor of the former, of the Blair government for Labour, says, nice angle, Andy Pandy. My mate took this shot at the same time. So this is a shot you saw. We just saw that video and there were some empty seats there. And then this is at exactly the same time, Alistair Campbell, and you got those empty seats there at the same place. So, interesting. Anyway, so that happened. We've got Elon Musk being taken to court, and he tried to get it sent away to another court, federal court, but it's actually not going to happen, and it's happening in Philadelphia. Larry Krasner has been testifying that the entire premise of the Musk lottery was a scam and a grift and disingenuous. So this is the idea that paying people $1 million to sign a petition looks a little bit like election interference and looks a bit dodgy. And actually, if you look at the text of the law, it does seem to break the law. I remember looking at that before. You are paying people to sign petitions that are concerning political desires, sort of like upholding this Second Amendment, stuff like that. Musk team has been arguing that this was not a lottery because its $1 million winners were actually pre-selected. So it wasn't by fluke. They were pre-selected based on whom would be the best spokespeople for the super PAC. Team Musk says the winners were not actually random. To which Elon Musk lawyers just told a judge in Pennsylvania courtroom that his $1 million lottery is a scam and not a lottery. It was actually prearranged, is the term they used. That's also illegal, says Dean Blundell. interesting. So he's just giving $1 million to pre-selected MAGA supporters, sold it as a lottery to get people to vote for Trump, to make rubes think they could be millionaires just by voting for Trump. There are 10 chargeable offences in that scheme, says Dean Blundell. I mean, I don't know the details, but Musk is in a bit of trouble, and some people are genuinely saying, actually, there is an existential desire for Musk to be supporting Trump. So in that interview with Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk said, "I'm effed if Harris wins. Like, I'm going to prison." And actually, there are some very good reasons to think he is screwed. Like, there are investigations into his acquisition of Twitter, for a start. There are all sorts of investigations into a number of things he's done and is doing. And I think he could well be in trouble. And so there's an added layer to why he is supporting Trump as much as he is. Now, talking of Tucker Carlson, he was just interviewed on, was it Joe Rogan?
You're making the case.
Where, was it? No, it wasn't Joe Rogan. Who was it? But anyway, it's Steve Bannon. This is a war room. Steve Bannon's war room. And Steve Bannon even, I think, was like, what the hell are you talking about? This was totally bizarre. Tucker Carlson has lost the plot. One of the claims he made is that he was in bed with 4 dogs and his wife, and he woke up because he'd actually been attacked by a demon. He had scratch marks all over him, and didn't for 1 minute think that maybe his dogs had done that. No, his first go-to is a demon. And then he's saying, like, he's gone down this whole demonic, weird rabbit hole.
That, sometimes we need to have an abortion. Okay. If you're making the case that abortion is an affirmative good, you are evil, you're practicing child sacrifice. And that is exactly what they're doing, as every culture before us has. But to see the Treasury Secretary, that dwarf, Janet Yellen, get up and say, you can do your part to help the American economy by killing your child, that's no different than the Canaanites, actually. So if people who don't see that clearly, that's exactly what it is. Worshipping abortion, the killing of kids, not as something that needs to happen, unfortunately, but as something that is good. That's pro-abortion. People, and I have to say, I'm sure I'll be attacked for saying this, but I really believe it. People are like, oh, well, we had another hurricane, must be global warming. No, it's probably abortion, actually, just being honest. You can't do that. You can't kill children on purpose, knowing that you're doing that in exchange for power or freedom or happiness, or whatever you think you're getting in return. You can't participate in human sacrifice without consequences.
So the hurricane happened because of abortion. It's like listening to the pastors of old say, oh, it was the gays. The hurricane happened because there are gay people. And you're like, oh, really? Do we have to go through this? Do we not understand climate? Do you want to understand that the warmer the air is, the more it retains moisture, and the more it retains moisture, the more rain you're going to get, and the warmer it is, the more the currents are going to be affected, blah, blah, blah. And you look at Spain the other day, is that because of abortion?
You're making the case.
Spain had, 8 months of rain 1 year of rain in 8 hours, and 200 people have died. It's horrific. And that appears to be connected to global warming. But, maybe you can blame that on abortion and the gays. And go and listen to his talk about demons and stuff. And he's just started to really lose the plot. And I think Steve Bannon was like, hello. But anyway, going on to legal matters concerning challenging the election after the election takes place, which is likely what's going to happen later today. This is Philadelphia being Philadelphia. F around and find out.
I want people to be reassured that when they get up tomorrow to go vote, if they have not voted already, that everybody in the city is working and has been working for months to make sure that there will be nothing tough about that experience and nothing to fear in that experience. But I also want to be clear, anybody who thinks it's time to play militia, F around and find out.
Whoa.
Anybody who thinks it's time to insult, to deride, to mistreat, to threaten people, F around and find out. We do have the cuffs, we do have the jail cells, we do have the Philly juries, and we have the state prisons. So if you're going to try to turn an election into some form of coercion, if you're going to try to bully people, bully votes or voters, you're going to try to erase votes, you're going to try any of that nonsense, we're not playing. F around and find out.
Absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. Good stuff. Good on ya, mate. Right, now let's get to the juicy bits, which is, my goodness, I've been going on for too long. I might do a last look at the polls in another video in a little bit. Anyway, that's my tuppence on what's been going on in terms of the rallies and a few other bits and pieces. Let me know what you think. I'm going to do a little poll analysis in a wee while. Take care and I'll speak to you soon.